Now, it goes without question that if you're a fan of Jeepers Creepers, then chances are you're probably more than excited to see the upcoming Jeepers Creepers Reborn movie, and I think that without a shadow of a doubt, this upcoming movie is going to be head and shoulders superior than anything we've seen go down in Jeepers Creepers 3. However, one of the many questions that the fandom seems to be asking is what is going to be the fate of the Creeper going into this movie and possibly even further beyond. Now, I am probably going to be the only one that's going to side on this particular stance here, but I think that despite whatever is about to go down involving the people that are going to be going up against the Creeper and the Creeper himself, by the end of this movie, the Creeper should still live on. I think that if you're going to somehow incorporate some kind of element to where Trish Jenner returns and she ends up somehow gathering this small army of townspeople that really want the Creeper dead, then by no means should there be a narrative where these rinky-dink people, despite what they may have as weapons, should take down the Creeper without seeing the Creeper put up a very aggressive and good battle. Now, similar to Jeepers Creepers 2, what they could end up doing in this movie is assuming the position that the Creeper was killed off, assuming that the Creeper had been killed, unless of course somehow Trish or another character discovers some kind of ritual to take down the Creeper, which I think by then should be something that should be adapted, especially when looking at the comics and how they portrayed the Creeper as being this ancient deity-like figure that was worshipped by some of the ancient people as the dragon god. So I definitely think that this movie should illustrate the case in point in seeing this small army gathered by Trish, assuming that she will play a big part in this movie, go toe-to-toe against the Creeper. And I think that by the end, if you want to kind of play into hypotheticals, it should be Trish and Jack and perhaps maybe some of the protagonists of this movie that gather together and take the Creeper down if and only if the narrative plays into the fact that the Creeper dies. Then I think that maybe perhaps Trish should have already gathered all of this information and had done her research throughout the span of 23 years to prepare for this very moment. And I think that it should definitely trace back to the ancient civilizations in painting this narrative to suggest that sure, there is a way to kill this thing, but it's not going to be as easy as simply shooting it in the head, right? So as of right now, as of this recording, we don't have any concrete information as to where the franchise is going to go moving forward, and don't go on believing or trusting any of these YouTubers or bloggers that claim that they have inside sources or super top-notch information is being passed on to them when in fact all they're doing is theorizing, speculating, and clickbaiting just like everybody else in falsifying a fake narrative just to put that out in the public when in fact it's not real to begin with. So the reason why I say that is because there have been so many narratives put forward about supposed script leaks and people claiming to have actual footage and even the end for the movie floating around on the internet from their super top secret sources, when in all actuality it's BS. For all we know, this movie could have a lengthy battle involving the Creeper. This movie could feature multiple endings. For all we know, we don't know what the current situation is in terms of direction, in terms of coming up with something definitive for the future. This could in fact be the end of the Creeper if this movie is lengthy enough to tell that story and having everyone come together and putting this thing down, or for all we know, the Creeper might end up sustaining so much damage but living as the movie comes to a close. Which, if you really stop and think about it, just because you may want something or you may like to see something in this movie doesn't mean that someone else actually is going to agree with you, because having a preference, especially for Jeepers Creepers, is subjective in a sense where some people want the Creeper to go back and be as vicious and serious as he was in the first movie, whereas others, believe it or not, they want the Creeper to kind of display more of a comedic style, more of a goofy style, as we've seen with Jeepers Creepers 2 and parts of 3. So by the end, I think that it all boils down to direction. If this movie is successful enough and if this movie proves to be profitable in a sense where people are going out to watch this movie in theaters, people are supporting the overall product now that Victor is gone, then surely enough the companies behind this are going to say, okay, we need to put out more movies, we need to put out more products, only because the audience seems to be invested, the audience seems to care, right? So a good example of this is Gina Phillips' character Trish Jenner and Justin Long's character as Derry. Now, believe it or not, if this movie, Jeepers Creepers Reborn, does not feature either a cameo from Derry in some kind of vision or in some kind of way, or even showcases the return of Trish to some capacity in being directly involved to hunt down the Creeper, then it doesn't matter, because despite how good the movie is going to be, there are going to be other subgroups of people that are going to hate on the movie only because Justin Long's character and Gina Phillips's character were not featured in this movie, you know what I mean? But even then, when going back and looking at some of the behind the scenes clips of the Creeper having to bust through windows and seeing his truck crash and seemingly even explode due to him having to go through a fence, throwing people around at this festival slash carnival, there are many character traits in this movie that the Creeper is going to display, despite even having to feature a moment where there was a man proposing to a woman for her to be his wife, and then out of nowhere, the Creeper just comes swooping on down and grabs the woman and takes her away. So yes, the Creeper is going to be aggressive, and no, I honestly do not think that they're going to murk the Creeper in this movie, because if this is supposed to be the exact same Creeper that we remember from Jeepers Creepers 2 at the very end with Jack, then what makes you or anyone else believe that if this is the same Creeper and he comes into his own 23 years later, that he's going to make the same mistakes that he did 23 years ago? Certainly not. He's not going to want anyone to know about his lair if he has a new lair because the cathedral burned down. He's most certainly not going to want to have anybody escape him like he did before, and that's a mistake, again, that's going to possibly cost him if this is the final Jeepers Creepers movie within the current entry. Because remember, let's just say as a hypothetical, if this is Jeepers Creepers Reborn is the last Jeepers Creepers movie within the current entry, then where do we go moving forward? Do we do a remake? Do we do somewhat of a reboot going back to the beginning? We don't know. I mean, the possibilities are seemingly endless. They could do another Jeepers Creepers movie following the events of Reborn, or they could do a prequel movie to the first one and showcasing where the Creeper had come from, right? So if all else, this movie should definitely start off with the obvious answer, which is allowing it to take place right after the events of Jeepers Creepers 2, with the Creeper finally having to awaken. You don't have to necessarily have the Creeper kill Jack, considering the fact that it's been 23 years since their last encounter, so you can only assume that the Creeper is in a very decrepit state. He's weak, he's vulnerable, so the first thing he ends up doing is sidetracking Jack, and he ends up escaping the barn to where he goes after the masses because he needs to replenish his body parts after 23 years of hibernation and after having to sustain such punishment during the events of Jeepers Creepers 2. That's the ideal opening, I think, for me. This movie could end up opening up in a very different way. As a matter of fact, we may never see either Jack or Trisha be featured in the movie, but instead a new cast group, which is ultimately okay, but I think that what's more important is if you want to kind of have a new cast moving forward, then it's always best to have the older cast kind of come back so they can go on ahead and pass the torch onto the newer cast, and thus having to then solidify them as being the new main characters of said story. But I also do believe that when looking at the recent director interview, it looks as though the director actually cares and is very much invested in this franchise, and I want you guys to go on ahead and take a very close look at this just to see it for yourself.
Because I remember Jeepers Creepers obviously from a kid. Well, not a kid, but you know, from the early 2000s when I was in my 20s, which is very the year when you watch that stuff and you're like, I was very scared, and you know, I was very, you know, new Jeepers Creepers, and then having that land on my table, like, this is something absolutely amazing. I mean, very practical way to look at the whole theme of rebirth or being reborn is comes obviously from the fact that we jump into an IP or a franchise that has already existed, and we want to give it a new life, a new rebirth, and it works also through the story of the film. You hear like, yeah, this was the first film we saw when I went to first date with my, you know, now wife and stuff like that. And I think it's always fun to hear that kind of stuff. So I hope that also it generates that kind of stories, and just bringing a fun new horror franchise and giving it new life to a new audience. And that's my really the only real hope about this.
Now, did you hear what the director said? He wants to give it a new life, and I think, in my opinion, this is not going to be the end unless there is somehow a massive twist revealed and there is another Creeper that exists outside of this one, which I really do hope is not the case. But in the comment section below, what I want to know from you guys is, do you guys definitively believe that this movie is either going to feature the end of the Creeper, or do you believe that in some way, shape, or form, by the end of this, the Creeper is simply going to live on and survive despite the amounts of punishment he may take and the overwhelming amount of oppositions he may come across in having to go toe-to-toe against not just one person, but in fact many, perhaps maybe even an entire town that is armed to the teeth. So again, thank you all so much for watching, thank you all so much for your time. If you guys love Jeepers Creepers and are new to the channel, then be sure to go ahead and smash that subscribe button, as well as also giving this video a big fat thumbs up by slapping that like button down below if you guys are simply stoked, ready, and excited for this upcoming movie, because this movie I think is going to definitely breathe a new life in which we've so desperately wanted to see in 2017 when Jeepers Creepers 3 came out, because it's been many years since Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2, and I really do hope that this movie captures the atmosphere, the dark atmosphere, the ambiance of what made the first two so special, and not turn this movie into some kind of mystery, murder, drama kind of movie where there's goofiness involved, or there's something that kind of coexists in the movie that doesn't really belong there. So again, I don't think the Creeper should die. I think that to some capacity the Creeper should live, and even after that, 23 years after said events, for the most part, some of these people that the Creeper ends up fighting are going to be dead anyway, with the exception of those that are young. But I also believe that they should carry on through with what happened at the end of Jeepers Creepers 3, when the message was alluded to that the townsfolk actually know what the Creeper is. So we're gonna have to wait and see, but I do want to go ahead and thank you all so much for your time. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you down in the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy, guys, and have a great day. Peace!